Happy New Year and welcome to your 2022 yearly horoscope. The way that I've structured these readings is in chronological order, which means it will be nice and easy to follow for you as I will be going through month by month from January through till December. Now, I strongly recommend that you grab a pen and a piece of paper because I have jam-packed these readings full of information. I also recommend that you find out the degree of your ascendant, sun, or moon sign, and the degree will fall somewhere from 0 degrees through till 29 degrees. If this is your sun sign, an easy way to figure this out is if you're born on the first day of the season, you will be 0 degrees in that sign. If you're born on the second day, you'll be 1 degrees, and so on and so forth. Now, before I get into your horoscopes today, I just wanted to say that if you watch your ascendant, sun, and moon sign horoscope for 2022, this will give you a more blended overview of what's to come. If you've just purchased the one, that's totally fine as well. So sit back, grab a beverage, and enjoy. Hi Leo Sun, Moon and Risings. Welcome to your 2022 yearly horoscope. Before I get into your reading today, I just wanted to give you a bit of an overview of what the major areas of focus will be for you for the year ahead. With the North Node entering the sign of Taurus, which means it will be transiting your 10th house, your career and your life purpose will definitely be a big area of focus for you. So will your family life and your property and living circumstances, as represented by the eclipses that we are going to see in your 4th house. Now, lastly, the big highlight of the year will be Jupiter transiting Aries in your 9th house. This is a great period of time for you to experience heightened levels of creativity and heightened levels of energy. And this is because Jupiter will be making a trine to your 5th house as well as a trine to your sun, moon, or rising. And now let's dive into the horoscopes. Now, January is going to be one of the most hectic months for the whole year, and this goes for all signs. And that is because we've just seen Jupiter change signs. We're going to have Venus and Mercury retrograde during January, and we're also going to see the North Node and the South Node changing signs for the first time in 18 months. But let's rewind a little bit to see how we finished up last year. On the 19th of January, Venus stationed retrograde in the sign of Capricorn in your 6th house. And Venus will actually be retrograde in your 6th house until almost the very end of January. So with Venus being retrograde in your 6th house, which represents work as well as your health, there will be a huge focus on your work environment as well as your health and also your daily habits. Now, Venus rules over your 10th house, which represents your career and your public reputation. So there will be a huge emphasis on your daily working life. And this is also indicated by the fact that the sun, which represents you, will be transiting Capricorn for the first 3 weeks of the month in your 6th house. So obviously there's a huge focus on this 6th house of yours. Now, with Venus ruling over your 10th house, which represents your boss, it represents managers, supervisors, and basically anyone who holds a position of leadership in the workplace, there will be a big focus on re-establishing your relationships with these individuals. So if you got off on the wrong foot with a manager or even your boss, this is a great period of time for you to iron out your differences. Now, if you were passed over for a promotion or a position of leadership, with Venus being retrograde in your 6th house, this is actually a great time for you to approach your boss once more and ask for this promotion once again. Or you might want to be asking if there are any positions of leadership coming up on the horizon. Now, on a different level, you may actually be saying goodbye to your boss or someone who you have employed. And this is because Venus represents relationships and Venus rules over your 3rd house. So this represents co-workers, and with Venus in your 6th house representing your boss and people that you employ, essentially anyone that you work with may be on the edge of resigning during this period of time. Another way that this can play out is that someone who was on leave, whether this was maternity leave or some kind of sabbatical, or even if someone was suspended, they may actually be re-entering the workplace during this period of time. Now, on a different level, Venus rules over your third house, and the third house represents things like reports, blogs, news, the media, magazines, and so on and so forth. And Venus represents music, art, and literary works. Now, because Venus is retrograde in your sixth house of health, you may be basically taking an inventory during this period of time of what you are listening to, whether this is podcasts, TV, YouTube channels. Maybe you're looking at what you like to read in terms of literary works, documentaries, or even news reports. Whatever you are listening to could actually be having a very noticeable impact on your health during this period of time. Now, this could be for better or for worse. On one level, you may be listening to things or consuming certain music or, looking at certain artwork, which makes you feel quite pessimistic or like you don't have a good outlook on life, and it could be actually having a negative impact on your perspective as represented by Venus ruling over your third house. So you may actually be wanting to cut certain things out of your daily consumption, and this could be Instagram accounts that you follow, Twitter accounts that you follow, and so on and so forth. On a different level though, you may be looking at reintroducing positive daily affirmations into your life. If there was a certain band that you love to listen to or musical instruments that you yourself like to play, revisiting these daily practices as represented by the sixth house could have a very positive impact on you. Now, on a totally different level, the sixth house represents legal matters and court cases. So if there was some kind of workplace sexual allegation case which has not been resolved or which has been postponed or adjourned, this can be revisited and resolved once and for all. Now, you could be noticed in the workplace for some kind of creative piece that you put together, and this is shown by Venus ruling over your third house. So maybe you put together some sort of clever marketing scheme. Maybe you created a PowerPoint or a presentation, or maybe you started some kind of blog or even simply wrote an article or an essay. And even if this was written a while ago, for some reason, this can be pulled up and basically circulated around the office, and you may receive kudos or recognition for your work. And this could actually lead to you having more responsibilities in the workplace, and this could very well lead to a promotion. Now, at the very end of December on the 29th, we saw Jupiter re-entering the sign of Pisces, which means that Jupiter will be transiting your 8th house. I'm mentioning this because Jupiter will actually be transiting your 8th house until the 10th of May in 2022. So essentially, it's spending the first quarter of the year in your 8th house, and this is actually a great transit for those of you who are looking to fall pregnant. And that is because Jupiter is in the 8th house, which is the house of giving birth, and it rules over your 5th house, which represents children. So if you are looking to fall pregnant, this is a big indicator for you Leos that this could very well be the case. Now, on a different level, the 8th house is connected to mutual resources. So your mutual resources could increase in a very big way. And this is because Jupiter expands whatever it touches, and Jupiter actually rules over your 8th house, and Jupiter naturally rules the sign of Pisces, which means that it loves being in Pisces. So your significant other or your business partner may actually receive a huge pay increase during this period of time. Now, on a different level, the 8th house is connected to inheritances. So you may actually receive an inheritance. Now, Jupiter was actually in the sign of Pisces from about mid-May through till the end of July last year in 2021. So if you are waiting on an inheritance connected to that period of time, then it could come through during the first 4 months of the year. On a different level, if your partner was anticipating some kind of promotion or pay rise, once again, If it was connected to that period of time in 2021, it may come through during the first 4 months of the year. Now, the 8th house in astrology is connected to psychology and healing on a deep inner level. So with Jupiter here, it would be quite a beneficial period of time for you to go and see a psychologist or a therapist, especially if it was someone who you were visiting during May, June, or July last year. Now, on a different level, the 8th house is connected to spirituality, the occult, and anything that is esoteric in nature. So this would be a great period of time for you to start studying your astrological birth chart once more. It would be a great time for you to receive an astrology reading or a tarot reading or even a Reiki healing. Now, lastly, the 8th house also rules over miracles and blessings. So if there was some kind of miracle that you were basically wishing would come through, whether this is connected to falling pregnant, receiving some kind of financial support, or even just healing on such a deep and inner level, this is a period of time where your wish may actually be granted. Now, on the 14th of January, we're going to see Mercury station retrograde in the sign of Aquarius in your 7th house. The 7th house represents your partnerships and your one-on-one relationships of all kinds. Whenever we experience a Mercury retrograde period, we essentially start revisiting relationships, projects, ideas, and we can reestablish connections with other people that we've lost touch with. Given that Mercury rules over your 11th house, which represents friends, business connections, and your older siblings, if you had a falling out with someone, or even if you just flat out don't have any communication at all, you can actually iron out your differences during this period of time and re-establish a relationship with this person. Now, on a different level, if you had simply lost touch with someone, they may reach out to you during this period of time. And once again, this could be a friend, someone that you used to do business with, an older sibling, or even a friend of a friend or an acquaintance. Now, on a different level, Mercury rules over your 2nd house, which represents your finances and your resources. So you may actually be renegotiating a contract with a business partner or with one of your clients. Mercury ruling over the 11th house actually represents investors and benefactors. So if there was someone who had initially said that they were going to invest in some kind of business venture with you, regardless of what their level of input would be, they may reach back out to you during this period of time and say something like, hey, I'm still interested in this idea. Do you still want to have me on board? Or even if you have been doing business with them this whole period of time and there hasn't been any break in your communication with them, you may actually be renegotiating the terms of your contract. And this could relate to your finances and your resources and how much they want to invest with you. And this could go either way. Maybe they want to put more money in, maybe they're wanting to decrease their percentage of what they've invested in your company or in your business. Either way, finances and resources are very much subject to change and fluctuation during this period of time, and this will be in effect until around the 25th of January, because at that point, Mercury will actually retrograde back into your 6th house, which is Capricorn. Now, on the 18th of January, we are going to see the North Node enter the sign of Taurus, and that means it will be transiting your 10th house. At the very same time, we are going to see the South Node entering the sign of Scorpio, which means it will be transiting your 4th house. The North Node and the South Node have been in the signs of Gemini and Sagittarius respectively since May 2020, and they're going to be in Taurus and Scorpio from January 18th until the middle of 2023. So let's start with the North Node. With the North Node in your 10th house, which represents your career, your public reputation, your public persona, and your life purpose, essentially, there will be an immense amount of focus on these areas for you. Many Leos will be changing careers, or at the very least, their status in society will change. Now, let's focus on how this can positively impact you. The North Node, which is otherwise known as Rahu, can see you setting new goals for yourself with regard to your career career and your public persona. And you can certainly be achieving these goals during this 18-month period of time. The North Node shows where we have a tremendous amount of ambition and also a tremendous amount of drive. So if you have been quite, scared to take some kind of leap of faith or transition into a new career or industry, with the North Node here in your 10th house, you won't have these fears anymore. Or even if you do, you'll be able to push past these fears and insecurities and pursue your dream life and your dream career with reckless abandon. Now, you will certainly be aligned to your higher purpose during this 18-month period of time. And some of you will be receiving promotions or taking up some kind of position of leadership. Now, you can actually become very well known and you can become famous or go viral during this period of time. And that is because the North Node, otherwise known as Rahu, shows where we can have a sudden rise in status. And of course, it's transiting the 10th house, which represents your status as it is. So you can actually become well known in the public eye, or you could become some kind of public figure, or you may become well known or even famous for some kind of worldly achievement. Now, you will certainly be feeling extremely ambitious and confident with the North Node transiting your 10th house. And this shows that you can actually embrace a very unique and edgy side of yourself. And I know all of you Leos have this anyway, but essentially with the North Node transiting your 10th house, this shows that you are not going to shy away from experimenting with your look and your reputation and the ways in which you are willing to be well known and put yourself out there. You will certainly be unafraid of setting new trends and essentially being leader of the pack. Now, in terms of the different ways that this will impact you as a Leo sun, moon, or rising, if you are a Leo sun, this is more so going to be on the career front, because the sun in our charts represents our career, and obviously the 10th house represents our career as well. So this refers to your life purpose, your vocation, and positions of leadership, and certainly, promotions, and of course being in the public eye. Now, if your moon is in Leo, you may have a change in status when it comes to your personal relationships, your property and living circumstances, and your family life. And that is because 10th house activations also represent changes in how other people refer to us. So this could be you becoming a parent for the first time, or a grandparent for the first time, or perhaps you are getting married and now your status is changing because you've gone from engaged to married. Or this could be you going from being single to being in a couple, or being in a couple to being engaged to be married. So obviously you can see that your relationships can be impacted in all of these different ways, whether this is with your romantic partner or on the family front. Now, for those of you who are Leo ascendants, this can impact you in all of those aforementioned ways, but I certainly would expect this for Leo ascendants to impact you in terms of your career and your life goals and your higher purpose in life, as well as your spiritual purpose. Now, let's talk about the potential downside with the North Node being in your 10th house. This can see you becoming overly obsessed and fixated with chasing some kind of status change. So this could be an obsession or a fixation with becoming famous, achieving certain goals, becoming a boss, or receiving some kind of promotion. Now, on a different level, if you do attain some sort of position of leadership or a promotion, or even if you become self-employed during this period of time, and even if you achieve an enormous amount of success during this 18-month period of time, you may just be experiencing feelings of imposter syndrome. And that is because the North Node, or Rahu in astrology, was known to be an appropriator. So you may feel feel like you don't deserve this success, or you don't deserve this title or this position of leadership. And, this can be quite discombobulating for you on many levels, because you may just feel like this isn't me. And for those of you who are, getting married, or you've just become a parent or a grandparent, this can have the same effect where you're like, well, I don't know if I'm cut out to be married. You may be experiencing cold feet if you are engaged to be married. Or if you've just become a parent, you may feel like, you're not doing it right. And, why do I get to be a parent? And, I'm meant to know more by this certain period of time. And how did I even get here? I just want to let you know, though, that wherever the North Node transits, it brings something new into our lives. So whatever you are experiencing, this is something that you are destined to experience and that you are destined to learn about. And these are situations that you are destined to acclimatize yourself to. So essentially, the North Node represents something new that we have never done before. And just circling back to those of you who have your moon in Leo, this can see you becoming property owners for the first time, or investors for the first time, or even renters. Maybe you're actually simply moving out for the first time in your life. And I just want to say that, all of these aforementioned things can affect you, whether you are a Leo sun, moon, or rising. I just wanted to outline what, the biggest indicators were for you and what was most likely to happen to you if you're a Leo sun, moon, or rising. Now, lastly, with the North Node in the 10th house, you may come off as being overly ambitious during this period of time, or, you could actually be self-involved, bordering on selfishness or arrogance. So that is something to just be, aware of with the North Node transiting your 10th house, because the 10th house represents how the public sees us. It is our public reputation. And I'm certainly not telling you to, shine a little less or dim your brightness. Certainly you should be shining bright during this period of time, but that is something to simply be aware of. Now let's focus on the South Node, leaving your 5th house, which is Sagittarius, and entering your 4th house in Scorpio. This can see you letting go of emotional baggage that you've been carrying around for a really long time. So this could be to do with your childhood, how you were raised, what your relationships are like with your parents, whether they are existent, non-existent, or even if your parents have passed away. The South Node transiting your 4th house can see you letting go of some kind of psychological trauma that you experienced when you were growing up. Now, on a different level, with the South Node transiting your 4th house, if you've been having some kind of disagreement or issue with your parents or with family members, you can just let this go. This could be a long-standing argument or a grudge, and you can finally bury the hatchet and put this behind you. On a different level, if you've been experiencing issues with your property or with your living circumstances, these can be resolved over the course of 18 months, which once again will be from mid-January 2022 through till mid-2023. Now, on a different level, the 4th house represents our ancestry and our lineage, and the South Node in astrology, which is otherwise known as Ketu, is a very spiritual energy. So this can see you actually connecting with your ancestry on a very deep level and on a very spiritual level. Now, the downside of having the South Node in your 4th house is basically a dissolving of your connection to certain family members. Obviously, this is in total contradiction with what I said earlier, but that is because, it's two sides of the same coin. When we see the end of a relationship take place or issues in a relationship take place, it can really go one of two ways. We either let go of this relationship completely to the point where we don't have contact and we just say, hey, I'm not involved with this person in any way, shape, or form. Or the other way that we can go is, I've healed this relationship, I forgive you, I don't resent you, and I'm letting go of this grudge forevermore. So obviously, the South Node transiting a 4th house can see issues that you have with your parents or with family members playing out in one of those two ways. Either way, your issues with them will be dissolved. And obviously this is a general reading, so how it plays out for you really depends on your own personal chart. Now, on a different level, the South Node transiting your 4th house can see you actually letting go of a family home that you really loved. Now, this could be because you just feel like it's time and you have to sell the property, or there may be a set of circumstances that arise which lead you to needing to sell this property, or perhaps you've moved out of home, but the home that your parents live in now and that you grew up in and that they've had for 20, 30, 40 years has been put on the market because they are ready to sell. Now, it doesn't need to be all about selling properties. It could just be that you are relocating from where you live, and you could be very emotionally attached to this residence, whether this is you living with someone else, this could be you renting a place and now you have to vacate for one reason or another, or perhaps you have finally moved out of your family home for the first time and there's this like bittersweet energy to it. Now, for those of you who are parents, you may become empty nesters during this period of time. Maybe the shoe's on the other foot and the last of your children is leaving the home, and now you're like, wow, the end of this chapter of me being an active parent has arrived. And obviously this could bring up a lot of different emotions for you. Now, for those of you who are younger parents, this could be as simple as your child is progressing from being an infant to being more independent, or now they're a toddler and essentially they're not as dependent or reliant on you anymore. And this can be as simple as they're no longer wanting to, receive cuddles and kisses from you. And you're like, oh, my baby, why is this happening? And you just watch them transition into the next stage. And of course, this could be, your kids going off to daycare for the first time or starting their first year of school. And there's this really poignant moment of acknowledgement of your child progressing from one developmental stage to the next. Now, lastly, for the month, on the 25th of January, Mercury is going to retrograde from Aquarius back into the sign of Capricorn, which means it will be in your 6th house. Now, for this last, 4 days of the month, we've got Mercury and Venus both in Capricorn, both retrograde in your 6th house, and Mars will actually be in Capricorn from the 24th of January. So essentially your 6th house is extremely activated for the last few days of the month. So this can see you actually receiving approval for a loan that you applied for, especially if this was delayed in terms of the approval coming through, or if you had applied for a loan before and you were knocked back, you can have success with it during this period of time. You may be paying off a loan to someone or to the bank that has been outstanding or that you've been trying to pay off for ages. Now, on a different level, you may just be renegotiating your pay for work, and there could certainly be a fluctuation in the pay that you are receiving, whether this is an increase or a decrease. Obviously this is a general reading. I am more inclined to say that it will be an increase though, especially because we have Venus here as well. And lastly, with Mercury ruling over your 2nd house, which represents what you eat, and being in your 6th house, which represents your health, some of you may just be changing your diet or returning to a former diet, whether this is going back to being a vegan, going back to being a vegetarian, going back to cutting out gluten or dairy or whatever. And of course, you may just see a change in the level of responsibilities that you have in the workplace. And it doesn't just have to be the workplace, this could be your daily responsibilities and the mundane tasks that you need to attend to. Now, there's not too much to report in February other than that Mercury will station direct in the sign of Capricorn in your 6th house on the 3rd of the month. Now, as for March, we are going to see Venus come out of the post-retrograde shadow period on the 2nd of the month. Now, on the 6th of March, we're going to see Mars and Venus enter the sign of Aquarius at virtually the same time, which means that they will be transiting your 7th house of one-on-one relationships. So this is really exciting for you, Leos, because we're going to see this huge activation of many different areas of your chart. And that is because both Mars and Venus rule 2 different houses in your chart each. So we've got Mars ruling over your 4th house, which represents property, and we've got Mars ruling over your 9th house, which pertains to education and travel. And then we've got Venus ruling over your 10th house, which is your career, and Venus rules over your 3rd house, which represents friends, co-workers, and, essentially work projects and skills and talents. So with Mars and Venus in your 7th house, this can indicate that during this period of time, which will be from the 6th of March through till the 5th of April, you may be making a new property purchase. You may be signing a new lease. You may be receiving a promotion at work. You may be starting an exciting new project, whether this is for work or a personal project. You may be joining a small group or team. Now, you may actually be forming a new partnership or an alliance, and this could be with someone who is of a very different cultural background to you. Now, when I say a partnership or alliance, this could require you to travel internationally. This could be with regard to education. You may be asked to become a tutor or to become a mentor or a counselor or some kind of advisor or teacher. But on the other hand, you may actually become someone's mentee. You may enter into a new mentor-mentee relationship. And on a different level, this can absolutely see a romantic relationship forming for some of you Leos. And that is because Venus is the planet of relationships itself, and it is transiting your 7th house of one-on-one relationships. And actually, when we see Venus and Mars both activating the 7th house, this is really a key time for new romantic relationships or even business relationships or friendships to kick off. So if you are starting a new relationship with another person, and let's just say that this is romantic, this could be with a friend, this could be with someone that you work with, this could be someone that you are in a class with together, whether this is like a gym class or a sporting club, or this could be, at college or at university. So as you can see, Venus and Mars transiting your 7th house of one-on-one relationships will be a very exciting period of time for you. Now, on the 3rd and 4th of April, we're going to see the Sun being exalted in the sign of Aries, as well as the Moon being exalted in the sign of Taurus. This only happens once a year during Aries season, so it's actually a great period of time for you to set new goals, set new intentions, and really start the year off on a high. And the reason I'm saying start the year off is because Aries season basically symbolizes the beginning of the astrological year, and that is because Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. So once again, that is the 3rd and the 4th of April, and this is great for manifesting and for writing down what you want to occur in your life for the next 12 months. Now, on the 12th of April, we're going to see Jupiter and Neptune form an exact conjunction at 23 degrees in the sign of Pisces, which means that this is occurring in your 8th house. Jupiter and Neptune are only conjunct one another every 13 years, and they won't be conjunct again in the sign of Pisces during our lifetime. So given that this is occurring in your 8th house, which is an extremely spiritual and psychological house, I see this as being an amazing period of time where you can actually heal on a deep level. And it doesn't have to just be emotional or spiritual or psychological. This can actually lead to physical healing as well. Now, the conjunction will actually be in effect from about the 8th of April through till around the 12th. So this 4-day period of time will actually be a very spiritual and cleansing period of time for you. Now, once again, the 8th house is connected to psychology and healing. So you may just feel like you are able to release some kind of, deep-seated emotional or psychological issues that you've been carrying around with you for a very long time. Now, this energy is going to be similar to what you will experience with the South Node transiting a 4th house in Scorpio, but I expect that if you were to Do a meditation during this period of time. If you are receiving some kind of energy healing work, if you go and see a psychologist, or even if you're just pulling tarot cards for yourself, you will be able to receive messages which resonate with you on a very deep level and on a very spiritual level. So if there's some kind of experience that you have been wanting to heal from, or that you have been struggling with from your past, you can actually let this go once and for all. Now, the 8th house is of course connected to mutual resources, and Jupiter is a planet which represents wealth and abundance. So you may actually receive some kind of generous donation from another person, and you may not even know where this donation is coming from. And that is because the 8th house is a very secretive house in astrology, and it's quite mysterious and magical, so you may never know where this financial support has come from. Now, this conjunction between Jupiter, which represents our spiritual beliefs, and Neptune, which is a very spiritual planet, can see you having some kind of spiritual awakening. The 8th house in astrology is connected to a mystical and mysterious initiation process, so you may actually discover that you have some kind of intuitive ability or a psychic ability, or even if you have intuitive abilities already, you may just see an expansion of these or a further development of these abilities. Now, the 8th house represents the chakra system. So if you are receiving a Reiki energy healing during this period of time, or even if you are doing energy work on yourself, you can see amazing results if you do so around the 12th of April. Now, on a different level, the 8th house represents conception and falling pregnant. And Jupiter rules over your 5th house, which is also connected to having children. Obviously, I mentioned this earlier with Jupiter transiting your 8th house, that this, is a great period of time for you to try and conceive. But especially around this date, you may find that you are a lot more fertile. And on a different level, you may actually be approved for adopting a child or for fostering a child. Now, lastly, with this conjunction taking place in your 8th house, this indicates that you may be contributing some of your own creative gifts and talents to higher spiritual purposes. And that is because Jupiter rules over your 5th house, which represents these natural talents and gifts that you have. So these could be related to music, art, astrology, tarot, anything to do with the occult, or anything esoteric in nature. And the reason I'm saying this is because Neptune represents our artistic and creative ability as well. So this conjunction happening in your 8th house indicates that your artistic, musical, and creative contributions may actually have a very profoundly healing experience on the collective. And that is because the 8th house is connected to healing, and Neptune represents the collective. So never doubt your creative gifts and your creative talents and how they may reach people and help other people, because the world needs what you have to offer, Leo. So don't be shy when it comes to putting your gifts and your talents on display and sharing these with the world. Now, later in the month, we are going to see the new moon solar eclipse take place on the 30th of April, and this will be at 10 degrees in Taurus in your 10th house. New moon eclipses actually have a huge impact on you, Leo, and that is because new moon solar eclipses basically involve the sun, which is your ruling planet. So just like Mercury retrogrades impact Virgos and Geminis, new moons, and especially new moon solar eclipses, impact you as Leos. So this particular eclipse, which is occurring in your 10th house, which represents your career and your life purpose, will have a very positive impact on you. And that is because we always need to look at what the ruler of the eclipse is doing. And in this instance, the ruler of the eclipse is Venus, and it will be at 27 degrees in Pisces. Venus will actually be in exact conjunction with Jupiter. They will be just 1 minute apart. Furthermore, this new moon solar eclipse is going to make an almost exact trine to Mars in Pisces in your 8th house. And of course, we will have Neptune in your 8th house as well. So obviously, we're looking at a huge activation in your 8th house, and of course this eclipse is occurring in your 10th house, which indicates that there will be a new development when it comes to your career. So this is for those of you who are still in the workforce or who are looking to rejoin the workforce. So this can see you receiving a promotion. This can see you starting your own business. This can see you accepting more responsibilities in the workplace, or you may take on a position of leadership. And I'm saying this because obviously this is occurring in your 10th house, which represents these work responsibilities. But on the other hand, we've got Jupiter ruling over your 5th house in Sagittarius, and this indicates you owning your own business. So if that is something that you have been wanting to do, this would be a great period of time to do so. And just adding on to that, even if you already own your business, if you are looking for some kind of launch date, whether this is to launch it, relaunch it, or launch some new products and services, doing so around the eclipse, especially if the nature of your business involves something artistic, something creative, something musical, if it's in the entertainment industry, or if it is quite spiritual and involves healing and psychology, again, this would be a great time to launch something. Not that I would ordinarily, recommend trying to use eclipse energy to launch something, but sometimes it just naturally happens where something new takes off, or we're ready to release something, and these just seem to coincide with eclipses. Now, on a different level, this can see you actually getting married, getting engaged, or entering into a new relationship. And that is because the 10th house represents a status change. And because the ruler of this eclipse is Venus and it is conjunct Jupiter, Jupiter represents marriages and Venus represents relationships. So obviously, this can see some of you entering into a more committed partnership with another person. Maybe you're simply combining your resources with another person. That's another way that the new moon solar eclipse can play out for you. And on a professional front, you may actually become a teacher for the first time, or maybe you're becoming a judge or a justice or passing the bar. And I'm saying this because Mars rules over your 9th house, which represents teaching, education, and the law. And lastly, with this new moon solar eclipse, there may be an opportunity for you to travel abroad or even relocate to another country. And this is indicated by the fact that this new moon solar eclipse is trining Mars. Mars rules over your 4th house, which represents where you live. So perhaps you are moving to a country that you've never lived in before, or maybe you are moving for work. And lastly, you could actually become a parent for the first time or a grandparent for the first time. So obviously there's a lot of exciting energy with this eclipse. And in terms of when this, event may take place, it can be like 10 days before the eclipse or 10 days after the eclipse, but you will certainly be feeling this, energy for about 4 weeks before the eclipse. So from the very beginning of April, you may start, having difficulty sleeping. You may feel a sense of nervous excitement or even apprehension. So I don't want any of you to freak out if you are feeling quite off emotionally speaking. It is very, very normal with eclipses, and this is something that you should be aware of as Leos, because you are likely to feel this energy for all eclipses. Now, on the 10th of May, we're going to see Jupiter enter the sign of Aries, which means it will be transiting your 9th house. This is essentially one of the most exciting times of the year for you Leos, and that is because Jupiter loves being in the 9th house because it is a house that it is naturally associated with. Now, Jupiter will be trining your sun, moon, or rising, and it will also be making a trine to your 5th house. The 9th house in astrology is considered to be one of the luckiest houses, and Jupiter is the sign of abundance, wealth, and prosperity. So with Jupiter here, naturally, you are going to be lapping up this great energy that you're receiving because you are just going to have a lot of energy, vitality, motivation, and you'll be extremely optimistic. Jupiter is essentially the most optimistic planet in astrology, and given that it will be in your 9th house, which is representative of seeing the bigger picture and seeing a vision for the future, you may actually have some kind of prophetic download when it comes to what you want to do with your life, what direction you should be going in, what you should be investing in, and this could be finances and resources, or even just what you should be investing your time into. Now, when Jupiter is in the 9th house, this is when we can receive marriage proposals. This is when we may just be getting married. This is when you may meet a romantic partner. And this is another indicator for falling pregnant. And that is because Jupiter is making a trine to your 5th house. So the 5th house represents children, it represents romance and having fun. And because it will be in the 9th house of marriage, this is where you can get married and, like I said, form a committed relationship with another person. The 9th house is the 5th house from your 5th house. Translation: the 9th house represents grandchildren in our astrological birth chart. So you may actually be becoming a grandparent during this period of time. Now, it doesn't have to be you becoming a grandparent for the first time. Maybe your children are simply having more children. And of course, like I said, this may actually be you falling pregnant, and that is because Jupiter rules your 8th house. And when we see the 5th house being activated and the 8th house being activated, given that Jupiter is trining the 5th, it rules over the 5th and it rules over the 8th. Again, this is just a recipe for you, falling pregnant. Now, obviously, it's not all babies and marriage. With Jupiter entering your 9th house, this can see you having an abundance of travel opportunities. So you may be going on a vacation. The 9th house is more connected to longer trips, whereas the 5th house is connected to vacations. In any case, Jupiter rules over the 5th and it's in the 9th, so it could be either or, and this certainly could be international travel. Now, with Jupiter ruling over your 5th house, which represents your creative gifts and talents, and being in the 9th house, which represents publications, your creative works may actually be published and circulated. Now, the 5th house in astrology is connected to authorship. So if you have penned a novel, or even if it's an autobiography, you may actually have your work published, or at the very least, you may be in contact with a literary agent. Now, it doesn't need to be for writing a novel. This could be for any kind of creative work that you have put together, or perhaps you've put on some kind of performance, and now with Jupiter transiting your 9th house, this can be circulated. The 9th house is representative of education and higher learning, and Jupiter itself is the planet of wisdom and knowledge. So this can take place in two different ways. On one level, you may enter into a traditional setting with regard to learning, whether this is being accepted into a university or a college, or on a different level, you may just be doing your own independent study and research. And I imagine that if it is the latter, then it will be with regard to something spiritual or esoteric in nature. And that is because Jupiter rules over the 8th house, and the 8th house is connected to spirituality and the occult. So with Jupiter here in your 9th house, you will certainly be expanding your current set of beliefs. And this pertains to your world beliefs, your political beliefs, your spiritual beliefs, and your religious beliefs. Some of you may actually be going into politics, and that is because Jupiter rules over the 5th house, and the 5th house represents politicians. Now, the 11th house is more political parties. I just wanted to make that distinction. And the 9th house is connected to the law. So you may be putting your hat in the ring to become a politician. Now, lastly, with Jupiter in your 9th house and making a trine to your Leo sun, moon, or rising, you will simply be filled with optimism for the future. You will know what you want to do next. You will have such a strong gut feel about whether or not you are on the right path and whether or not you should be course correcting and changing the trajectory that you are on. Jupiter in the 9th house, and especially being in a fire sign, is so beneficial for you as a fellow fire sign. And this is because Jupiter naturally rules over Sagittarius, and this is why Jupiter likes being in the sign of Aries. So this is obviously activating your fire houses, which are the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th. So you will be filled with creative energy, and you will also experience this desire to fulfill your full creative potential. Now, also on the 10th of May, we are going to see Mercury station retrograde in the sign of Gemini in your 11th house at 4 degrees. Mercury naturally rules over Gemini, and that means it rules over your 11th house. It also rules over your 2nd house, which is Virgo. Both the 11th and 2nd houses in astrology are connected to your finances, so that is going to play a very big role during this Mercury retrograde period. The 11th house is connected to our long-term goals and dreams, and whenever Mercury is retrograde, it's about rethinking the matters of the house that it is transiting. So you may be rethinking your long-term goals and dreams. You may be reevaluating what these are. You may be rethinking what your strategy is and how you want to proceed with trying to achieve these long-term goals and dreams. Now, with Mercury ruling over your 2nd house, which represents your finances, you may be doing the math and crunching some numbers with regard to how much money you are actually going to need to be able to pull this off. Now, on a different level, the 2nd house represents your resources. So you could just be taking stock of what your resources are, and you may have to sell off certain possessions and valuables in order to basically afford investing in your long-term goals and dreams. Now, with Mercury ruling over your 11th house, which represents benefactors and receiving financial support from investors, there may just be like a renegotiating of your contracts with these individuals. So they may be saying that they want to put more money in, or take more money out, or take some of their resources out. I'm not saying that it's going to, be a loss for you. Obviously, this is a general reading, so it can go either way, but usually we end up in a better position than what we were in after Mercury retrograde takes place, because it allows us to see what our shortcomings are, where there are potential flaws or pitfalls in the plan, and essentially you can course correct and make the necessary adjustments. Now, the 11th house represents your wider social network, so some of you may be getting reacquainted with certain friendships or with acquaintances as it is. You may hear back from people who you met a very long time ago, even if you just met them once. You may just be bumping into people on the street, or you may receive a message from them wanting to do business with you or just wanting to connect with you. Now, the 11th house rules over large groups and communities. So you may actually be revising your level of input in these certain groups or communities. Your participation in certain groups or communities may be revoked, or you may be pulling out of certain groups. In any case, with Mercury ruling over your 2nd house, which represents your values, you may just decide that you don't have the same values that certain friends have or that certain communities that you are a part of have. And this is where you may be deciding to essentially go separate ways. Now, lastly, with Mercury being retrograde in your 11th house, you may actually start receiving certain rents, dividends, or royalties. And this is likely to be money that you have been expecting but that has been delayed for some reason. On a different level, there may actually be complications with these that you need to iron out. And for those of you who have applied for some kind of government grant or subsidy or even a pension, if you had applied for this ages ago and you've been waiting and waiting and waiting, you may actually receive it during this period of time. On a different level though, if you had applied for this and you were initially knocked back, this would actually be a great period of time for you to reapply and give it another shot. Now on the 16th of May, there will be a total lunar eclipse at 25 degrees in the sign of Scorpio. So this will be occurring in your 4th house. The ruler of this eclipse will be Mars, and this eclipse will actually be making a trine to Mars, which will be conjunct Neptune in the sign of Pisces in your 8th house. Now, the other aspect that this full moon eclipse is making is a square to Saturn in Aquarius in your 7th house. Full moon eclipses are all about the end of a chapter taking place somewhere in our lives. And given that this is a total lunar eclipse, this will be a very powerful ending indeed. Because this eclipse is occurring in your 4th house, which is connected to family and your living circumstances, if you have had some kind of long-standing issue with a family member, or perhaps you haven't been in communication with one of your family members, you may actually put these issues aside and bury the hatchet once and for all. On a different level, this can see there being some kind of explosive argument take place within your family. Now, this could be with your parents, this could be with your children, or another member of your family. And on a different level, this may just be with someone that you are living with. Now, with this eclipse occurring in your 4th house, eclipses can bring to light some kind of buried information or hidden information. So you may actually discover some kind of secret that one of your family members has been harboring. On a different level, you may just be relocating from where you currently live. Now, this could be you moving into another apartment or another home, or there could be some movement on the property front. So you may actually be selling your family home or one of your investment properties. Now, lastly, with this full moon eclipse occurring in your 4th house, you may actually discover that you are pregnant around this time. Now, with this eclipse making a trine to Mars and Neptune in your 8th house, I see this as having a very healing energy. It is important to note that this eclipse is making a square to Saturn in Aquarius in your 7th house. So this square indicates that there may be a bit of tension or resistance in one of your personal relationships around this period of time. Now, like I mentioned with the previous eclipse energy will be with you about 4 weeks before the eclipse and even a few weeks after. So you may just feel like you are unable to sleep, or you may feel quite restless and a little bit off emotionally speaking during this period of time. So this would be from, at least the beginning of April, given that we're having the solar eclipse take place on the 30th of April, and you may feel a little bit unsettled till about, the first week of June or even the second week of June. Now, on the 22nd of May, Mercury will actually retrograde back into the sign of Taurus, which means it will be transiting your 10th house. The 10th house, once again, represents your career, it represents your public image, your public persona, and the positions of leadership that you hold. So with Mercury being retrograde in your 10th house, you may actually be rethinking your career entirely, and you may decide that it is not in alignment with your long-term goals and dreams, or perhaps it is not in alignment with the legacy that you have either already created or that you are wanting to create, as represented by Mercury ruling over your 11th house. Now, on a different level, with Mercury retrograde here, you may actually be re-entering the workforce after a period of not being able to find a job or a sabbatical, or maybe you're just in between jobs, or you may actually decide to quit your job unceremoniously during this period of time. Now just be mindful that you may be having miscommunications with your boss or with someone who is in a management position at your work, as indicated by Mercury itself being retrograde. Whenever Mercury is retrograde, we can have miscommunications with people. Now, lastly, with Mercury retrograde in your 10th house, you just want to be careful if you are giving a public speech that you are not going off script. And that is because anything that you say during a Mercury retrograde period in a public forum, or even just, with other people, this can come out later and it can come to bite you on the ass. So make sure that you are not just making offhand comments or making, risky jokes, because they may fall flat during this period of time, and this may create a mess that you have to clean up later. Now on the 3rd of June, Mercury is going to station direct in the sign of Taurus in your 10th house. Later in the month, on the 21st of June, Cancer season is going to commence. This is more so important for you Leo suns out there, and that is because every time the zodiac season that precedes our sun sign season starts, we can experience a lowered sense of vitality. So in a nutshell, Cancer season comes before Leo season, so Leo suns may be feeling more lethargic, a little bit lazy. You may be susceptible to falling ill during this period of time. So this can be applied to all suns. So let's just say you're a Taurus sun, the same thing would be the case when it is Aries season. Nonetheless, in July, we are going to see Leo season start on the 22nd of the month. So once Leo season commences, this is when all of you Leo sun, moon and risings are going to feel more energized. You're going to feel like it's really your time to shine, and the spotlight can certainly be on you during this period of time. Now on the 28th of July, we are going to see Jupiter station retrograde in the sign of Aries in your 9th house. So everything that you have been focusing on from May 10th through till the end of July, you're now going to revisit what you have learned and what you have commenced so far. So you may have started studying something new. You may have been putting together an itinerary for overseas travel. You may have been delving into spiritual practices, or perhaps you are learning more about different religions. In any case, Jupiter is retrograde for 5 months of every year, so it's really not that big of a deal, but I just thought I would flag it because on this particular date, you may start feeling a little bit demotivated, or an obstacle may come up with regard to your plans for the future. Now on the 31st of July, we're going to see one of the most exciting astrological events take place for the whole year, and that is the North Node and Uranus conjunction in Taurus at 18 degrees in your 10th house. And we're also going to see Mars being conjunct at 17 degrees as well. Now this will all be squaring your sun, moon or rising, and that is because Leo and Taurus are both fixed signs. So this will absolutely have a big impact on all Leos. Having said that, the Leos who will be most affected by this particular conjunction will be those who have their sun or ascendant between 14 degrees and 22 degrees. Now, if you have your moon in Leo, I'll extend this to 10 degrees through till 26 degrees. So now let's get into the analysis. The North Node in astrology represents new technology, experimenting. It represents new inventions, new innovations, and it also represents being cutting edge and ahead of the curve. Now, the North Node is also connected to scandals, becoming notorious for something, but it can also show you having a sudden rise in status. Now, Uranus has a somewhat similar energy. It represents shocking developments, sudden upheavals, and it is also connected to new inventions, new innovations, technology, and also large groups of people, communities, rebellion, and reform. Now, Mars in astrology is connected to engineering, having an action plan or a strategy for what we want to achieve. And it also represents goal setting. So because this conjunction is taking place in your 10th house, which represents your public persona, your public reputation, your life goals, and of course it represents how society sees you, this particular conjunction can obviously play out in a multitude of different ways. Now, on the career front, this can see you making some kind of groundbreaking discovery, or you may be developing new technology. You may make a scientific discovery. You may innovate something or invent something which is going to impact a very large group of people. Now, Mars rules over your 9th house, and the 9th house in astrology is connected to travel, it is connected to education and the law. So for those of you who are involved in politics, you may be looking at initiating some kind of progressive new bill, or you may be trying to lead some kind of rebellion. On a different level, you may be involved with developing technology which pertains to air travel. Now, I'm not just talking about making improvements to your regular old planes out there. Maybe you are looking at air travel in a way that we have never experienced before. And you could certainly be working on something which is going to receive quite a polarizing response from society, as represented by this conjunction with Uranus. Now, on a different level, you may be looking at developing new ways of studying or new ways of learning. You may be putting together some kind of progressive new course material. You may become a teacher of astrology, which is represented by Uranus, or you may become a teacher or a professor of something that doesn't even really exist yet, or something that is, quite cutting edge, but that other people are a little bit, hesitant to explore. And this is shown by the North Node having this very taboo and experimental energy. And of course, Uranus itself is connected to shocking other people. Now, with Mars ruling over your 4th house, maybe you are looking at some kind of bill or law with regard to conserving an environment or trying to protect sacred lands. Now, because Uranus is representative of rebellion and reform, and Mars rules over your 9th house, maybe you are fighting a bill that is trying to be pushed through. Maybe you are petitioning against existing laws. Now, the North Node and Uranus being conjunct in your 10th house indicates that you may actually go viral or become some kind of, leading figure in the public eye. And this could be for something which is very progressive. This could be for your new inventions or your new innovations, or you could become well known or even famous for something which is very controversial. On a different level, with Mars ruling over your 9th house, maybe you're going to become well known or famous for making some kind of prophetic declaration in terms of predicting the future, and then something comes true. Now, Uranus represents natural disasters. So maybe you are predicting some kind of natural disaster, or perhaps you are trying to help society or a large group of people or a community to work through the devastation which has occurred as a result of a natural disaster. Or perhaps you're simply making some kind of new scientific discovery when it comes to our existing understanding of things like earthquakes, volcanoes, hurricanes, and tsunamis. Now, on a more personal level, you may actually quit your job as a teacher, and this could shock other people. Perhaps you are quitting your current education, or you may be turning your back on your long-held beliefs which were steeped in religious ideologies or in spiritual values. Maybe you are doing a total 180. given that this conjunction involves Mars and Mars rules over your 9th house, which represents education and your belief systems, you may become well known in the public eye for your unusual set of beliefs or for your progressive set of beliefs. But like I said, this may just be, you shocking your family, as indicated by Mars ruling over your 4th house, for you declaring what you believe in. Maybe your whole family is religious and you're coming out to them and saying, by the way, I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in this, or I am renouncing this religion. Maybe your whole family grew up as atheists and now you're converting to a certain religion and they're just like, wow, we, did not expect this of you. Now, on a different level, Uranus rules over your 7th house, which represents your partnerships and your alliances. So perhaps you are forming some kind of unlikely partnership or alliance with another person. Now, because this conjunction is taking place in your 10th house, this could be with respect to a career choice. But having said that, Mars rules over your 9th house, which represents marriages. So perhaps you are spontaneously getting married and people don't have any idea that you're planning to do this. Or it could just be that you are, coupling up with someone in a romantic sense. And this could be very shocking to other people. Now, this could be because you've been single for a long time. This could be because no one had any idea that you were currently dating. Or the person who you are romantically involved with could be quite Uranian in nature. They could very well be an Aquarius, sun, moon, or rising. Or they may just be quite eccentric, and this is why your family or people who you are friends with or even people that you work with are very shocked by this decision for you to be involved with this person romantically speaking. Now, because Mars rules over the 4th house, this can indicate you making some unusual and sudden changes with regard to the property that you own or with regard to your current living circumstances. Because Mars rules over your 9th house, this could see some of you Leos relocating to a foreign country, or if you live in a foreign country, maybe you are returning to your home country. In terms of how this conjunction may affect you, if you are a Leo moon, I would expect this to impact you more on the family front. So there may be some shocking new developments with your family, and this is, likely to involve decisions that you are making because this conjunction is squaring the sun, which will be in Leo. Now, again, for those of you with your moon in Leo, you may just be making unusual decisions with regard to where you are living. And of course, this could also be unusual decisions or polarizing decisions with regard to how you are choosing to raise your children. Now, for those of you who have your sun in Leo, this conjunction is more likely to impact you with regard to your career, your life purpose, and your life goals. Now, if you're a Leo rising, all of the above applies. Now, on the 11th of August, Venus is going to enter the sign of Leo, and it will be transiting your 1st house until the 5th of September. Whenever Venus transits our sign, this is when we are feeling more beautiful. This is when we are receiving a lot of compliments. This is when you may be wanting to do some kind of makeover, change up your look, indulge and pamper yourself. And because Venus rules over your 10th house, this is a time where you may actually be in the public eye. And of course, it will still be Leo season until around the 3rd week of August. So really between the 11th of August and around the 23rd of August, this is when you are going to be feeling your absolute best. Now, on the 20th of August, we are going to see Mars enter the sign of Gemini, which means it will be transiting your 11th house. This is important because Mars will actually be in Gemini for 7 months. It will be there until March 2023. The reason it is spending so long in the sign of Gemini is because it will actually be stationing retrograde at the end of October. So I'm flagging this one now because you're going to want to pay very special attention to whatever you are starting around the 20th of August or later. this can see you setting some very exciting goals for your future. And this is because the 11th house is connected to our long-term goals and our dreams, and it is also connected to our legacy. Wherever Mars goes, this is where we're putting a lot of our energy and our focus. So you may actually be creating some kind of new group or community, or joining a new group or community. You may be looking at starting a political party, or joining a political party, or working on a political campaign. The 11th house is connected to technology and the internet. So you may be looking at developing some kind of new social media platform, or you may actually be creating a new social media account during this period of time. Now, the 11th house is connected to our wider network. So this represents our friends, our business relationships, our business clients, and acquaintances. So this will be a key period of time where you will have a lot of success and benefit greatly from doing a lot of networking. And you may be looking at attending networking events, or you could even be setting up some kind of large-scale event. The 11th house in astrology is also connected to receiving awards, prizes, trophies, and recognition for something. And it also represents receiving rents, royalties, and dividends, as well as government subsidies and pensions. So I'm just once again outlining what you may be commencing around the 20th of August, or certainly between that time and the end of October, because this is going to become pivotal come the end of October. Now on the 9th of September, Mercury is going to station retrograde in the sign of Libra in your 3rd house. Whenever Mercury is retrograde in the 3rd house, it has this double whammy effect. So you will be so busy with calls, texts, emails, even if you're not working. This will be friends, family, and siblings, and maybe schoolmates or co-workers, just wanting a piece of you, essentially. So you'll be non-stop with having to work on projects, tweaking things, going over things. If you had completed a piece of work, whether this is for your boss or for yourself, you will probably have to go back over it and make changes. This is a period of time where you may be resitting tests, resitting exams. You may be having a lot of miscommunications with family members, such as your siblings, your extended relatives, but also co-workers and friends. We can actually pick up where we left off with regard to long forgotten courses or writing pieces. Now, if you had started a website or started a blog and you had basically just left it there and never finished it, Mercury retrograde is a great period of time for going back and fixing things. Now, on a different level, if you had started a course and you pushed the pause button on it, you may actually pick this course back up. With Mercury being retrograde in your 3rd house, you can actually have a huge shift in terms of your perspective with regard to your long-term goals and dreams. And this is because Mercury rules over your 11th house, which represents what you want to do with your future. Now, on the 23rd of September, Mercury is going to retrograde back into the sign of Virgo. So this means that it will be in your 2nd house. When Mercury is retrograde in the 2nd house, this is where we can receive money that has been owed to us for quite a long time, or we can discover possessions or valuables that we thought were lost forever. Now, this is also a period of time where you're going to be revising your budget and looking at how much you're spending on things. Your financial streams of income are likely to fluctuate, and that is because Mercury not only rules over your 2nd house, which represents your finances, but it also rules over your 11th house, which represents passive income. So you may actually receive money that you didn't know was going to come in, or you could receive money that was owed to you, and this could be for rent that is owed. This could be for a government subsidy or a pension. And this is for if you've been waiting on it for quite a while. Now, if you usually receive your pay like clockwork, unfortunately, this can actually be delayed. I know that's a little bit confusing and contradictory, but essentially, if you've been waiting for ages for money, you can score and have it come in. If you normally receive your money on time, this can be delayed. So I hope that makes sense. When Mercury is retrograde in our second house, this can see us changing up our diet, and that is because the second house represents the food that we eat. The second house also rules over our wardrobe and our valuables and our possessions. So you may go back to a certain look or aesthetic that you used to wear. And, this could have been from years ago. But on the other hand, you may actually be cutting certain things out from your wardrobe. You may be donating them, but this would also be a good time for you to sell these possessions and turn a profit. Now, on the 2nd of October, we're going to see Mercury station direct in your second house in the sign of Virgo. Then on the 25th of October, there will be a new moon solar eclipse at 2 degrees Scorpio. So this will be occurring in your 4th house. Now, this new moon solar eclipse will actually be in exact conjunction with Venus at 2 degrees. And it's also important to look at what the ruler of the solar eclipse is doing, which will be Mars, and Mars will be at 25 degrees Gemini in your 11th house. New moon solar eclipses are like new moons but on steroids. They represent a very powerful new beginning starting somewhere in our lives. Now, given that this is occurring in your 4th house, this is likely to impact you in one or more of the following ways: your property and your living circumstances, your family life, and your psychological health and well-being. So with this new moon solar eclipse occurring in the 4th house, you may actually be buying a new property or selling your property. Now, Mars rules over the 9th house, which represents international travel. So you may actually be looking at relocating to a foreign country. Now, on a different level, Venus rules over your 10th house. So whatever you are doing with your property, this may be inextricably linked to your career. So for example, you may need to relocate in order to transfer to a new office or to take up a new job. Or perhaps you are having to quit your job in order to relocate to wherever you want to move to. Now, with Mars ruling over your 4th house and your 9th house and being in the sign of Gemini, perhaps you've had this long-term plan to attain citizenship in a foreign country or permanent residency. So you may actually be commencing your application for this process to begin, and this is indicated by Venus ruling over your 3rd house, which represents contracts. Now, you may actually be falling pregnant during this time, and this is because new moon solar eclipses have a very big impact on you. Oh, as I said that, oh my God, my candle went out. Wow, some of you are definitely getting pregnant. I mean, obviously this is a general reading and that's likely to happen anyway, but seriously, if this is something that you have wanted to do for a really long time, that is 100% confirmation to me. Now, as I was saying, new moon solar eclipses are very, very important for Leos, and this is because new moons involve the sun, which is obviously your ruling planet or your ruling luminary. So if that's something that you are looking at doing with you and your partner, or even solo, doesn't have to be with a partner, this can certainly, come through for you. Now, on a different level, you may actually be starting to work from home. And this is indicated by Venus ruling over your 10th house, which represents your career. It rules over your 3rd house, which represents self-made worth. So perhaps you are starting to work from home. Now, a different way that this could play out is that you may be starting a new chapter in your career which pertains to property and real estate, or it could even be to do with working with land conservation or, working at a reserve or a national park or something of that nature. Now, a new moon solar eclipse in the 4th house can impact you in the sense that there may be big changes in the lives of your family. More specifically, I would say that this would be your parents, if not your mother, or at the very least, your primary caregiver. Now, I just want to emphasize that with this new moon solar eclipse occurring in your 4th house and being conjunct Venus, which rules over your 10th house, which represents your public reputation, whatever new chapter is starting in your life, this is likely to have a very big impact on how you are referred to by friends, society. The 10th house represents your reputation preceding you. So whatever decisions you are making or whatever is taking place around this period of time, this will have an impact on how you refer to yourself, how you identify, and how other people perceive you. And lastly, given that the 4th house represents your deep psychological foundations, you may just be having a huge perspective shift about, what your childhood influences left you with as an adult. Maybe you had, really difficult childhood, and this has always impeded your ability to forecast for the future, especially if you grew up in a foster home, for example, because when we have instability in our childhood and growing up, this can leave us, with the feeling of, oh, I can never plan, more than a year ahead, or I can never plan more than, 6 months ahead even. And this is indicated by Mars ruling over your 11th house, which represents long-term forecasting for the future. And with Venus ruling over your 3rd house, which represents how you think, many of you Leos are going to have an epiphany around this period of time, which once again will be on the 25th of October, where you realize that it's okay to plan for the future. And if things don't work out, failure is just a test run for success. So this is a very exciting solar eclipse for you Leos. Now on the 28th of October, we are going to see Jupiter re-enter the sign of Pisces in your 8th house. And Jupiter will be here until the 20th of December. So essentially, we've got a couple of months here where you are really going to be working on yourself in terms of understanding yourself at a deep psychological level. This will be a great period of time for you to return to an astrologer, to return to your tarot reader, or to return to your spiritual, occult, and or esoteric learnings. Now, with Jupiter here in your 8th house, you may actually be receiving inheritance money. You may be receiving money from a former lover, and this is represented by Jupiter ruling over your 5th house. Now, the 5th house in astrology represents owning your own business, and it also represents your creative gifts and talents. So if you were expecting money to come in from creative works that you have produced, or even some kind of entertainment performance, especially if you're an actor or even if you're a professional athlete, money that you've been waiting on can finally come through with Jupiter in your 8th house. And also you may receive money from an insurance claim, which was pertaining to a vacation that you took. Now, on the 29th of October, we are going to see Mercury enter the sign of Scorpio. This is important because the next day, on the 30th of October, Mars will station retrograde in the sign of Gemini in your 11th house. Now, because Mercury rules over Gemini and it's in Scorpio, and Mars rules over Scorpio and it's in Gemini, these two planets are in mutual reception with one another. Now, if that was a little bit confusing for you, all I'm saying is Mercury and Mars are working in tandem with one another. They are sharing the same agenda, so this is a really good thing. Now, if you cast your mind back to what I said about whatever you start around the 20th of August being important, we are now at the point where you are going to revisit these matters. So with Mars being in the 11th house, this is about you going back to a large scale event that you may be planning or that you may be wanting to attend. This is you revisiting new business connections that you've made or new friendships that you've made as a result of all the networking that you've done over the last couple months. The 11th house is connected to large groups and large communities. So again, we're looking at what your involvement is in these groups or communities. And the 11th house is connected to political campaigns and political parties. And lastly, this could be about new inventions, new tech, or some kind of new app or website that you are building. So now that I've outlined what the area of focus may be for you, let's unpack this. Whenever Mars stations retrograde in a sign, we start experiencing obstacles and challenges that we need to overcome that pertain to the sign that Mars is in and also the house that Mars is in. So in the sign of Gemini, this is all about communication, sales, marketing, how you are thinking about things, what your perspective is, and also gathering details and piecing it all together. Now, given that this is occurring in your 11th house, ultimately, this is about your long-term goals and dreams and your plans for the future. Gemini likes to have all the information. Mars likes to create an action plan or a strategy and then go, full pelt towards it, like a ram, head first. Now, because Mars is retrograde, you will need to slow down. You need to go back over your plans. You will need to put in at least 3 times more effort into whatever it is that you are trying to initiate or get off the ground here. And this can certainly see you butting heads with friends, acquaintances, business connections, and older siblings. And also the 11th house rules over benefactors and investors and passive income. So if you've been applying for, a government subsidy or a pension, or if you have been trying to get investors on board for something that you are creating, you are going to need to go back and renegotiate, as is shown by the fact that Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury rules over your 2nd house, which represents your finances and your resources. Obviously, Mercury will be in Scorpio in your 4th house, which represents that you may need to lean on people that you live with or lean on your family for support, and you may even require some financial assistance from them. You may actually be requesting that they invest in whatever it is that you are trying to do here. Now, on a different level, this can see you having to pivot when it comes to putting together some kind of large-scale event, or perhaps you are the leader of a large group or community, or even if we're just looking at your involvement in certain groups or communities, there may be some real issues here or roadblocks that you need to overcome. Now, if you are looking at launching your business or launching on Kickstarter, you may need to delay this particular date. Mars in your 11th house represents innovating something, because the 11th house is connected to new inventions and new tech and the internet, and Mars represents engineering, and Mars rules over your 9th house, which is all about looking at the long-term vision for the future and seeing the bigger picture. So you may have developed some kind of prototype that was initially meant to be launched around the end of October, or even sometime in November or December, or even early January, and now you're like, shit, this is not going to be ready. I have to delay the launch date for this. So this is obviously going to be a bit of a setback for you. Just remembering that this is a general reading, but just remember that Mars being retrograde is actually a good thing, because it allows you to rework something and go back over the plan and change it and make it better. Ultimately, Mars being in your 11th house wants you to do well in your future. It doesn't want you to mess this up. It doesn't want you to not shoot your shot or miss the opportunity. So, while you may be disappointed or disheartened to hear me say that there may be some obstacles or challenges or a delay in the plan, just know that you actually delaying until you were truly ready means that you are going to receive a much, much, much better outcome or result than what would occur if you launched something prematurely, or if you initiated something before it was truly ready. Now, on a different level, the 11th house represents receiving recognition and some kind of, prize money or a trophy or an award. So if you are wanting to apply for, let's just say, a prize or an award or recognition, and this could be, some kind of like best-selling author, or, best new invention of 2022 or whatever. With Mars being retrograde here, you may actually need to wait for the next set of applications. And for those of you who have applied for a government subsidy or for a pension or to receive dividends from something or royalties or rent money, you may just have to go back over your application and make some adjustments. The fact that Mercury is in the sign of Scorpio and Mars is in Gemini, and therefore they're in mutual reception with one another, suggests to me that whatever you are doing with this Mars being retrograde in your 11th house, that this is somehow connected to where you live, where you want to live, property. Maybe you want to help your family, maybe you want to prove them wrong, maybe you want to make a point, or on a different level, this could be, a childhood dream that you've had. And that is because the 4th house in astrology is connected to our childhood. But in any case, like I said earlier, this could simply be about you spending more time at home. You may not be able to go out and socialize so much, especially with Mars being retrograde in your 11th house. So there could just be many, many long hours sitting at your desk at home, or, just not going out anywhere because you were trying really hard to, get this off the ground. In any case, once Mars stations direct in the sign of Gemini on the 12th of January, you will have achieved something which is truly magnificent. And you may even go viral with whatever it is that you've developed or whatever initiatives you have started. And this is because the 11th house is connected to social media and our social media following. So I guess another way that this could play out is maybe you started a new social media account and you've just been trying to build it up for ages, but you haven't had any luck. Or if you do have an existing account and you saw either a mass exodus of followers, or you've really, really plateaued with what you're trying to grow here, after mid-January, or better yet, after March, when Mars actually leaves the sign of Gemini, you will have achieved something amazing and it will probably exceed all of your expectations. Now, on the 8th of November, there will be a total lunar eclipse in Taurus at 16 degrees in your 10th house. And it will be in exact conjunction with Uranus. It will be opposed by Mercury and Venus in Scorpio, and it will be squaring Saturn in Aquarius in your 7th house. So we've got your 10th, 4th, and 7th houses being extremely activated by this eclipse. So this will be felt on such a powerful level for all Leo sun, moon, and risings. Lunar eclipses represent a very powerful ending to a chapter in our lives. It represents something reaching its peak. So given that this is occurring in your 10th house, which represents your public reputation, your public persona, your career, and your life goals, it's likely that many of you Leos will either be ending your career, so you could be resigning, walking away, you could actually be retiring from the workforce altogether, you could be re-entering a new industry which is quite progressive in nature or which is very shocking to people around you. But we also need to look at what Mercury, Venus, and Uranus are doing here. So Uranus rules over your 7th house, which represents your alliances, your partnerships, and your one-on-one relationships. Because this eclipse is making a square to Saturn, this can show you wanting to break free out of some kind of contract or partnership that you found yourself in. So this could be with regard to work, or this could even be with a friend or with someone who you are romantically involved with. In any case, this total lunar eclipse will have some kind of drama surrounding it, and that is because it is going to be conjunct Uranus, exactly. So this represents a sudden break from this contract or from this partnership or this alliance. And if you had made a promise to someone, you may need to go back on your promise. And there can be a pretty dramatic result or fallout from this. But of course, this is going to be for your best and highest good. And this is because Mercury, which is opposing this eclipse, rules over your 11th house. So this is all about you doing something which is going to have a positive impact on your long-term goals and dreams. Now, because Mercury rules over your 11th house and your 10th house, which represent your finances and your resources, this indicates that this total lunar eclipse may involve your finances somehow. So maybe you are looking at selling a property or relocating, and this could be for financial reasons. Now, on a different level, the 10th house represents how you identify in the public eye. So perhaps you are coming out in some sort of way. Now, this could be actually coming out, or this could be stating what your intentions are going forward. Maybe you are telling the world or telling your family that you don't want to work in this career anymore, or that you don't want to, subscribe to these family values as represented by Mercury ruling over your second house. I sort of see this as you disappointing your family in some way, but this being a very positive choice for your personal growth and for your spiritual development. On a different level, you may have achieved something which is really amazing, and this is indicated by this eclipse occurring in your 10th house. So you may go viral or become famous for something that you have developed, or perhaps something that you have put out on your social media platform goes viral. And I'm saying this because this eclipse is opposing Venus and Mercury. Venus rules over your 3rd house, which represents social media, and Mercury rules over your 11th house, which represents the internet, and it also represents social media. So I'm expecting there to be some pretty explosive changes with Leos. And even if you look at certain celebrities who are a Leo sun, moon, or rising, you will notice that those who have their sun, moon, or rising around 16 degrees will have some kind of, big news that is being announced at this time. So you may just have an announcement that you're making to people. Perhaps you're announcing that you're pregnant, or that you're breaking up with your partner, or that you are no longer wanting financial support from someone, and this could shock other people. So, this could be like a declaration of sorts where you are saying you want to be financially independent, or these are my long-term goals or dreams, or I'm setting up this legacy, or I'm leaving the family business. That's another big one. In any case, just remember that eclipses bring about events which seem quite dramatic in nature, but eventually we come to realize that they are all about course correcting us and putting us on a trajectory which is going to align us to our best and highest good. Now, lastly, for the year, on the 20th of December, we are going to see Jupiter re-enter the sign of Aries, which means that it will be transiting your 9th house. This is such an amazing way to cap off the end of the year because, like I said earlier in this horoscope, Jupiter loves being in Aries, Jupiter loves being in the 9th house, it's trining your ascendant, sun or moon, it's trining your 5th house, so you can just be feeling really creative during this period of time. You can have a lot of success in the romantic department during this period of time. And Jupiter will be in the sign of Aries for another few months until it enters Taurus. So with Jupiter here, you will have a revitalized sense of energy. You can have a lot of success with your creative projects, with your business ventures. And for those of you who are in quite creative professions, whether this is art, dance, performance, music, maybe you're a professional athlete, there will be amazing opportunities for you to expand with your creative gifts or your athletic gifts even further. And so, Leo, I hope you've enjoyed this yearly horoscope for 2022. It's going to be such an enormous year of change for you guys, but this is going to see many of you being aligned to your higher purpose and achieving some of your long-held dreams and goals for the future. So please take care, enjoy your year ahead, and see you next time.